Call to order the May meeting of the Knox County Board of Zoning Appeals. Ms. Clerk, if you would call the roll, please.
Curtis Brown,
Present.
Jonathan Repass,
Present.
Doug Lloyd, Roddy Lovingood, Cecil Anderson, John Elliott,
Present.
Sherry Garrett,
Present.
Rebecca Longmire,
Present.
Paul Huff.
Present.
Five.
We have a
Five.
quorum. We have a quorum. Ms. Longmire, if you would lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members of the Board of Zoning Appeals are volunteers from each commission district who do not receive compensation for their work on the board or training they attend. As a quasi-judicial body, we avoid ex parte communication and conduct our business in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. My name's Paul Huff. I'm the chairman of the board. To my right is Mr. Excuse me. Oh, pardon me. My vice chairman and the law director, Mr. Mike Moyers. Knox County Codes, do you have anybody here?
Yes, sorry, our mic isn't working. Today we have myself, Steve Elliott, Randy Ward, from the codes office, the Mike Reynolds from Knox Planning. I have other staff members here to answer any questions concerning the today.
Okay. I think I forgot to mention Curtis Brown, my vice chairman. Our voting procedure requires a simple majority of the board members present. Today, there are 6 members present. We require 4 affirmative votes to pass any motions. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. The Knox County Board of Zoning Appeals is authorized to grant variances and hear other matters by the Tennessee Code and Knox County Zoning Ordinance, specifically 6.60 Board of Zoning Appeals. These laws prescribe strict parameters, the meeting of which is required to grant a variance. The burden of proof that an application meets these parameters rests on the applicant. Quoting from the Knox County Code of Zoning of Ordinances, 6.60.04 variances, quote, "The purpose of the variance is to modify the strict application of the specific requirements of this ordinance in the case of exceptionally irregular, narrow, shallow, or steep lots, or other exceptional physical conditions whereby such strict application would result in a practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship which would deprive an owner of the reasonable use of their land. The variance shall be only used where necessary to overcome some obstacle which is preventing an owner from using their property as the zoning ordinance intended. For each matter, the clerk will read the request into the record. The chair will then ask if the applicant is present. The chair will then ask if there is opposition or other speakers who wish to present. You do not have to come forward at this time. Once we determine the speakers for the item, we will call on the government agencies such as Knox County Codes, Planning, or Engineering to make statements regarding the facts pertinent to the property and background of the request. Board members may ask questions of the governmental agencies once they have made their statements. The chair will then call the applicant to come forward, state their name and address for the record, and present their evidence and reasoning supporting the granting of a variance. If there is no opposition, the applicant has 10 minutes to present their case. If there is opposition, the applicant and opposition may have up to 15 minutes. After the applicant's presentation, the board members may ask questions of the applicant. The chair will then call for opposition or other parties who have up to 15 minutes to speak. This 15 minutes applies to all parties, so if there are multiple parties that wish to speak, please determine how you're going to divide your time beforehand. After the opponents present their opposition, the board members may ask questions of the opponents. Finally, there will be a discussion of the case by the board, during which time board members may ask further questions of parties that have already testified. The board will then make any determination it deems necessary. Our bylaws allow an applicant at the initial hearing of the matter to request a deferral of 30 or 60 days without prejudice. In the event of a deferral of an application or failure to appear, any opponents may be heard on the record at a meeting where the application they oppose appears on the agenda. Swearing in of the speakers. Mr. Law Director.
All right, if you're here to speak, there we go.
There we go. Yeah.
All right, if you're here to speak to this board on any item that's on the agenda, please stand and raise your right hand. All right, do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're going to give today be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, be seated, please.
Are there any agenda changes or corrections?
Yes, item 4D will need to be deferred until next month. The applicant or the developer for the property has asked to be removed from the agenda and would rather go to court and not appear before this body. And also item 4C, as we discussed in the agenda review, would not need a variance. They would meet the minimum requirements of zoning ordinance. So I think that's the only changes we have.
Okay, I understand on 4D, we're going to defer that because we haven't gotten the letter from the applicant. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm new at this.
Chairman, I'm sorry. And as part of the motion for 4C, we were going to make a motion to refund their money.
Yes. Okay, we'll start with 4A and just go on down the agenda with that.
Do we need to make the motion to go ahead and postpone and take that
I
out?
think we'll do that when we get to them
When you
on the
get to
agenda.
them, okay.
Item 4A is a request of Reginald Bell. It's for a waiver of rear yard setback from 25 feet to 7 feet. The property is located at 308 South David Lane, CLT map 131, Group NC, parcel 00806, zone RB in the 5th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? Is there any opposition? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Make sure your mic's on.
Reginald Bell, 1348 Pale Moss Way, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37912.
Please state your request and the reasons for it.
I'm requesting to lessen the setback from a 25-foot setback to a 7-foot setback due to an irregular lot as well as a power line that runs down the east side of the property, which is going to cut probably about 20% of the existing lot as being unusable.
I probably should have asked this before, but are there any statements from Knox County codes?
The only thing we would add to this request is If this church is closer than 10 feet to the property line, they would have to fire rate the exterior wall. The fire code would require anything below 10 feet to be rated. I feel like the church should be aware of that on the front end because it may be cost prohibitive to go down that low. So I would leave it up to them. They may want to revise the request to just down to 10 feet, but it would require a rated assembly for that wall along that rear property line.
The setbacks as shown on the drawing, are they allowed to park in that 25-foot setback on the front or the side?
Yes, I believe so. Let me look at the zoning ordinance. So let me look that up and I'll get you an answer on that.
Okay.
While we're waiting, sir, Mr. Bell, Reverend Bell,
Yes.
do you understand about the fire-rated siding that you'd have to put on? Because it is kind of expensive.
Yes, ma'am, I understand. I understand the procedure.
Okay.
Reverend Bell, do you know who owns the power line?
No, I do not.
So you haven't talked to anybody with the power line company about whether or not they would allow you to park under their power line?
No, I have not. I was just going off of the requirements, the 10-foot setback off of the power line.
Chair, I did check with KUB. It's only a permanent structure like a house or a building. A parking lot, even a paved parking lot, is permitted under KUB lines. And this isn't one of the big, heavy TVA transmission lines, you know, with the
No.
towers. Okay, just KUB.
So the 10-foot setback affects the building, but it doesn't stop you from parking under the
No,
power
it doesn't
line.
affect the parking, but it
So
does affect the building.
does that change your parking layout at all?
Yeah, that will change my parking layout. I'll be able to afford for more parking if I can park in that area.
So would you like to defer judgment on this until you have a chance to look at the parking layout with this new information?
Okay, because I should have 4B also is concerning the parking, but 4A was going to be concerning the setback.
And I got the parking lot setback for you. There is a parking lot setback, it would, from the rear of that front, from the front to the rear of this parcel where there's a 5-foot setback. So he could have parking up to 5 foot against that property line. So he could park in that 25-foot setback as long as his parking lot sets back 5 feet.
Were you aware of that, Reverend Bell, before the meeting?
No, I was not, but that's totally acceptable to us as long as we can, I was told it's we have to have 20 parking spaces minimum. So my variance was to take it to 10 parking spaces because of the setbacks off of the power line and the setback off of the.
But now you have more information that may not require a reduction or maybe less of a reduction. So again, would you like to defer judgment on this until you have a chance to relook at your parking layout and determine whether or not you actually need a variance?
Yes. No, I don't want, no, sir. I don't want to defer. I don't want to defer. I like to get it rolling.
My question is, right now you're asking for a waiver of rear yard setback from 25 to 7. Do you want to change the 7 to 10?
I can now, we can change the 7 to 10.
And that would keep you from having to do the firewall.
That would keep us from having to do it, because I was just made aware of the firewall being within the 10 feet.
Okay.
Reverend Bell, you kind of put us in a kind of an interesting situation. You're asking us to approve a setback variance because of parking restrictions that may not actually exist with this new information. So
The setback variance was the 25 feet setback from the back of the property.
understand that, and that was because if you didn't get that setback variance, it would limit your parking availability, correct? But
Yes.
now that you know you can park in the 25-foot front setback and you can park under the power line, I don't know that you have a valid reason for the request for the setback variance. You gather what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand.
That's why I offered you the 30-day variance.
To go back and
or
take a look at it.
Deferral, to go back and look and see if you actually need a variance, because right now, it doesn't look like you may not need one.
I'll go ahead and defer to next month then.
Thank you.
So I can go ahead and,
And, sir, get with codes, they'll be able to help you determine, because it would be very helpful if on the sketch, we could see where the parking was going to be and everything. And you do want to change that 7 to 10 feet,
okay.
okay?
Yeah, he can work with our staff, and we'll come back next month. I think we can probably get him in a good spot for next month.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Longmire, I appreciate it. I did meant to mention that we would like to see a parking layout.
Thank you, Isabel.
We need a motion to defer.
I'll make a motion to defer this for 30 days.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay.
That will apply to 4A and 4B.
Yeah.
Okay.
Item 4C is a request of Hector Torres Reyes for waiver of front yard setback from 95 feet to 60 feet at 717 North Cedar Bluff Road, CLT map 119, Group AE, parcel 023, property zone RAE in the 3rd Commission District.
I believe this is the one that you've already mentioned from codes, that there is no need for a waiver because you already meet the required setback in the ordinance.
That's correct, as discussed in the agenda review. The plat does show a greater setback, which would be a HOA requirement. The 60 feet that he's requesting would meet the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. So based upon our conversations earlier, we don't believe he needs a variance.
Do we
Could-
need his name and address?
Yeah, we do need you to please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Hector Torres
And address, please.
And your address.
is North Cedar Bluff, 717.
Is that sufficient? Very well. Just to explain, there is no ordinance that requires a variance right now. You meet the setback requirements in the code, okay? So there is no variance required from the code standpoint. The issue you may have is with the homeowners association, if there is one that controls this. The setback that you're having a problem with was put on the plat by the developer. And I don't know how many years ago that was done. It's several years, I suspect. But as far as this body is concerned, and as far as the law is concerned, you meet the law. You do not need a variance.
Mr. Torres, basically what it means is you're in good shape from us. You don't need a variance, and you'll get your money back.
Okay,
So you can talk to codes, and they'll help you. If the neighbors complain, the neighbors will have to deal with it. For us, you're good.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. But you do need to talk to codes, okay? Good.
I'll make a motion to dismiss this due to no variance needed. He meets within the guidelines of Knox County of 35 feet variance setback, and ask that his application fees be refunded.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you.
Item 4D, request of Joel Reyes to appeal Knox Planning approval of case number 4-H-24-DP setback reduction located at 0 Westland Drive, CLT map 133, Group GC, parcel 006, Zone PR in the 4th Commission District.
This is the item that we decided to defer for 30 days because we have not got the letter yet from the applicant regarding the opt-out procedure to take it off the agenda.
That is correct, but the letter was mailed, we've not received it yet, so once we receive the letter and the law director approves it, then this item will be removed and will go straight to court. But I think it's best we defer it for 30 days to make sure that letter is adequate for what the law director needs.
Is the applicant here by any chance? No. Motion to defer.
I'd like to make a motion to defer for 30 days due to the applicant using the opt-out procedure.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. We have 4E.
Ready? Item 5A is a request of Vogue Tower Partners 7 LLC, Cellco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless, for a waiver to reduce the required landscaping buffer from 12 feet to 8 feet, and for waiver to reduce the minimum perimeter fence setback from 25 feet to 8 feet at 2635 Byington Solway Road, CLT map 090, parcel 12305, zone I in the 6th Commission District.
Any input from codes on this one?
I would say, and Chairman, I got your message about having someone look at the vegetation out there that's in the existing right-of-way. And the stance from engineering is that the vegetation that's in our right-of-way should not be considered as part of their required landscaping. If that vegetation were to ever come down in a storm or had to be removed for sight distance, we wouldn't allow it to be put back. So we didn't go look at it because we don't feel like they should be able to claim the vegetation in the right-of-way as part of their required landscaping. That it's not something that we think would be in the best interest of the public.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Sandifer, 4125 Coosa Drive in Cumming, Georgia. I'm project manager representing Vogue Towers. Go ahead.
Can you, before you speak, is the property owner for this property here? That's fine. I just wanted to know if you're here. Okay, go ahead and give us your reasoning for this variance request.
Okay. I was originally before you 2 months ago in March requesting some relief. The applicant is building a multi-provider wireless communications facility or a tower site on the edge of this property that's right up against the road right away. Due to the odd shape there, instead of being a nice rectangle, we're looking for relief, and what we had originally sought was relief on landscaping and then the 25-foot fence requirement to the right-of-way. The guidance we received in that discussion was looking to do everything we can to meet the landscaping, and therefore what we resubmitted was additional area other than, I don't know if you can see it, other than the northeast corner still has the issue where we are only 8 feet 7 inches to that right-of-way. So with the exception of, there you go, the next one down might be larger even. With the exception of roughly 20 feet or so in that top corner, we were able to, the striped green area is the additional 7 feet. So with the exception of that top corner, we're able to meet the landscaping additional space around those 3 sections of right-of-way. Right now, including all 4 sides, we're looking at roughly 2 rows, and we had estimated 135 holly bush type, but we're also open to working with staff on how best to determine the landscaping type that'll be applied there.
It was my understanding that the requirements require the 12-foot landscaping buffer on all sides. Is that correct or not?
Correct.
Steve? Why is it not shown on the
Because-
side where the driveway opening is?
I have an updated drawing that shows that. Because we have lease rights there, it wasn't that additional space. When I was here in March, we talked about the fact that that additional space outside of the applicant's lease space would be potentially donated landscaping, clear all this off and come back and put the landscaping in. Because there's access rights coming in that way, this revised drawing didn't show that because we can meet the 12 feet on that side.
Do you have a copy of this updated drawing?
Yes. Show to you, guys. The update drawing is the one that also, I think it's the last page, shows where we were showing 135-foot, 6-foot hollies to be planted.
While we're looking at this, I don't know whether it's your codes, it won't be a monoculture. There'll be a variety of plantings, or will it all be the same planting?
Mike, I'm going to defer to Mike Reynolds. I think he may have a little better input on this than myself.
Well, I'm sorry, Steve. I don't review the cell tower application, so I'm just trying to educate myself here as well. But in regard to the monoculture or other, I have to look in the code, see if it actually requires more than one. Usually it's just says landscaping, but I can check and make sure.
So the landscaping that's outside the lease area, who are you expecting to maintain that?
Applicant. So Vogue Towers is working with the property owner, and that was one of the questions that came up, maintaining it. And so I expect that Vogue Towers will maintain the landscaping as they will the landscaping that's within their lease area.
Any other discussion?
You do back up to the railway. Is there a problem with the right-of-way with the railway and your?
No, ma'am. So the railroad is to the south there, and we can meet everything along there. You see the full,
Yeah,
I don't, if you look in, let's see, my top right corner, I think to be clear, the only area that are asking for a reduction is that little triangled piece up there.
Yeah.
Go right there.
2 o'clock or so.
I think what I hear him saying is they meet the requirement in every other area. Just that area is the only area that is not being met.
I know the railroad can get picky about its right-of-way. That's why I was asking.
We're still outside the right-of-way. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
good.
It appears from the drawing that you're only talking about a span of maybe 15 to 20 feet along that right-of-way line.
Yes, sir.
Is the issue of the reduction in the landscaping buffer?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The additional landscaping added there meets everywhere except for that top corner. It's roughly, like you said, maybe 18 or 20 feet, and the smallest area is where that measurement shows 8 feet 7 inches. Even along the northern side, we'll basically be right up to the right away. I believe that measurement's like 12 feet 5 inches, so we'll essentially be landscaping to the right of way.
So the issue with the fence, I understand the fence is where it is because you need that much buildable area to fit your equipment and lay out all of your stuff. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct? So I guess my follow-up question is, why didn't you make the lease area big enough that you could get 12 feet beyond that, or is it 25 feet? Get it far enough out that you don't need the reduction in the fence offset.
So this was, the applicant, and Vogue has looked at several properties here and was able to put together a deal on this property. This end of it was considered some area that they cannot otherwise use. As far as additional space, I don't know the details of the negotiation that went on, other than this was space that was deemed that they couldn't, it was okay to put a tower site here, reserving some other space should they ever have some future expansion. So this was so-called out of the way. It is We're asking for relief on the fencing, although the telecom ordinance does require 25 feet off the right-of-way for the fence. The fencing will be consistent with up and down the street. There's a lot of them that run a lot of the other uses. Granted, they're not telecom, they're just straight up industrial. The fencing is similar to the existing uses there.
So, like I said, the fence is where it is because you need it to be there to fit your equipment.
Yes, sir.
And-
Under the telecom ordinance, we have to show for a minimum of, 3 additional providers so that it's a shared use facility and not more towers in the area. So we need the interior space. Yes, sir.
Very good. And the rest of the property out there is pretty much, not disparaging, but pretty much useless?
This end of it. So they have a facility, they have a building and facility and
I
truck
understand.
parking. Yes, sir.
On the 3 sides, the Byington Sawway and the railroad, those rights-of-way, the property beyond your lease area is not really used for anything else. So the fence is where it is because that's where it needs to be to fit all the equipment. But your right-of-way, your lease line appears to be arbitrary. You could have put it all the way out to the right-of-way line on 3 sides, but you chose not to. And now it's causing you an issue with the setback from the fence to your lease line, and that was caused by where you set the lease line. It's not because you couldn't get the property. Property's not useful for anything.
Could we hear from the property owner?
Yeah, I would like to hear from the property owner whether or not he would have worked a deal with you to get extra room to put the lease area outside your fence so that you don't need a variance. Because right now, I'm not hearing one.
Okay.
And right now, I'm really confused, I'll just have to say.
The landscaping reduction, I understand. You need that, it's up against the corner. That makes sense. But the fence offset from the lease line is controlled by where you put your lease line.
Correct. Even if the lease line went to the right-of-way, we couldn't meet the fencing without moving further deeper into the property owner's property. The fence line here to the bottom, to the railroad right-of-way, is just over 15 feet. So the fence line there, which, again, we had the 5-foot original landscaping buffer, so the lease line goes within 10 feet there. The lease line is within 5 feet of the right-of-way in that north corner where we're struggling on the landscaping already. And we are, 12 feet total to the right-of-way to the top. In order to meet 25 feet setback for the fencing, this site would basically be nothing but a small fence. If you had to move back 25 feet in all 3 directions there to meet it, it renders itself useless, and then the variance would be that this becomes a single-use site versus a multi-facility that more people go on the tower, so.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
But, yes, you wanted to hear.
And I would like to say that I really appreciate the fact that it will be a multi-use rather than a single-use tower. And yes, I'd like to hear from the owner of the property.
Okay.
My name is Kevin Durbin, 2635 Byington Sawway Road in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Basically, do you have anything to say about the property and the leasing?
It was, this was basically a project when my sons and I bought the property and the company last year. So as owners, I have a lot to say. Okay, we're very supportive, certainly, of the project and want that to go through. I think like any project, even in the manufacturing side, as things progress, other issues come up. So we are very open to moving. I will tell you, I'm not as intimate with the project as one of my other sons is, but we're certainly open to work with Verizon and Vogue Towers to make this happen. So it is a it's not a useful part of our property in any sense at all, which made it really a kind of a nice place to have a project that did the community some good as well as the communication site. So we would never develop this part for a manufacturing business. We happen to own the property as well as the company itself too. So I hope that in the years to come, we need to have a discussion about expanding, but right now, we really don't need that space. So we have a room to buffer there if we need to.
Thanks.
Okay.
Is your company the Accurate Paper?
We are, right, our legal entity is DW Manufacturing and DW Real Estate Group, but we do business as Accurate Paper Box, which has been in operation there since 1975, so.
Interesting. Well, you've done a nice job with that property, just cleaning it up and painting it in general.
Thank you.
I drive by it multiple times a day. I think the question kind of that they were trying to get at, is there more leasable property to Vogue if they wanted to lease more property, if that was a...
I think what we're talking about is moving towards our building, feet or whatever that is. We certainly are open to that, absolutely. The project has, as I said, is developed, and we really wanted to push it out as well as Vogue, and Verizon as far out into that corner as usable. So it gives us some space. The real only expanding space in there is our truck turnaround area for our warehouse. But right now, we don't use nearly any of that space out there, and the vegetation it's kind of scrubbish. It's nothing extraordinary. So that's.
I have a question for, I guess it's planning or codes, I'm not sure which. What is the main driver for the 25-foot setback from the property line to the fence?
I don't know. It's in the ordinance, so I don't have any idea why. Maybe Mike has some input on that, but I don't.
I don't have a 100% answer for you, other than that when you put a fence in, it usually creates a line of sight that's similar to a building. And so if you have a fence that's closer to the road than other buildings on the same area, it can be a little bit aesthetically different or a change for an area. So that might have been the reason, but otherwise I'm not sure.
Is that likely to be an issue in this location?
I don't really know this location very well, so I can't say.
I don't believe so. They're coming to a stop condition here, and then the other traffic's going under the rail bridge, so I don't believe that it would create a sight distance issue here.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions for the property owner?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Based on the information that's in the packet, not what we received, the additional information that we just looked at, what's in the packet, there are only two things I think need to be changed. Based on the drawing, and I'm going to refer to drawing C3 that's in the packet, the minimum perimeter setback looks like 5 feet, and it's 5 feet all the way around the property. Can somebody with the applicant please look at that and tell me if you see that to be true?
Those are the opposition.
Yeah. I see a 5-foot setback from the fence to the property line on all 4 sides on drawing C3. So your setback request needs to be from 25 feet to 5 feet, not 8.7, on the fence setback.
Well, the closest point still, if you're looking, the top right corner, the closest point or the least amount of space is still that 8 feet 7 inches, and so.
Okay, I guess I need to clarify that. When it says 25-foot setback from the property line, is that the lease line or the actual owner's property line?
It would be I would interpret to say property line, not lease line, so I
Okay.
would think it would only have to meet the 25 feet around the three sides of the property line, not the interior lease line. Because they're not creating a property line, they're creating essentially an easement type or an overlay of what they're leasing.
Okay. And I think you probably have fixed it already in your supplemental, but the minimum height of the bushes, shrubbery, trees, whatever, is 6 feet, not 5.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You have anything else to offer? Are there any other questions?
Saying that the waivers, that the reductions are
Correct.
as they stand. Okay.
Yes.
Opposition?
Do we have opposition? Thank you, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin Murphy, 4508 Murphy Road. I'm here representing the Board of Scenic Knoxville today, that I'm a board member of. And Scenic Knoxville was established to advocate for beauty in the community and some of the things that it does in terms of some of the key tools that we have are ordinances for signs and landscaping and such. So, and since this is a landscaping ordinance or variance request, we're here interested in it. And we really advocate for maintaining the integrity of those ordinances because there was intentional reasoning those passed. On this variance, I think I would really bring you back to Bza 101 and the criteria for granting a variance. And the first one is when you go into the zoning ordinance that you're all familiar with, is that a variance is allowed when there's circumstances or conditions such as the strict application of the zoning ordinance would deprive the applicant of any reasonable use of their land. So that's a really key term there, any reasonable use of their land. Now in this case, you have the applicant who has leased a portion of the land, but the zoning ordinance doesn't talk about somebody that's leasing land. The zoning ordinance talks about the owner of the land. The owner of the land owns that entire parcel outside of this, and they currently have, it's a zoned industrial, and they currently have a manufacturing facility there. They have reasonable use of their property already. So, when you look at your kind of flow chart, do we meet this? Have they been deprived of any reasonable use of their property? The answer is they have reasonable use. So, in this case, what they're asking for is they want a second use on their property. And the zoning ordinance is silent on that one. That gets into, but they do have, but if you were if you're zoned office and you had a medical office building there, and then you want to, you're also allowed to do some residential, and you want to build a residential on that same piece of property, but you've kind of left yourself not very much room. Would you would you approve variances for somebody to come in who already has a medical office on this office zone property and then say, well, we'll reduce all of your setbacks there so you can shoehorn a residence in on that as well?
Can I stop you for just a minute? Yes. Are you talking about the property owner or the applicant?
So in this, I don't think the variance process is linked to a property owner. So in this case, the applicant doesn't have full use, isn't leasing the entire property.
The ordinance doesn't speak about property owner. It speaks to the applicant making the application. The property owner's not making the application.
Okay, all right. All right, well, actually, let me then speak to 6.6.04. And I think this actually mimics state law, if I recall, that talks about the ordinances. So 6.604 says, whereby such strict application result in practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship, which would deprive an owner of the reasonable use of their land. So that's not in subsection A.3. This is 6.6.04. It actually talks about the owner of the land. So that's your standards, that gets in, just what a variance is. And I believe, if my memory serves, that is really copy and pasted from the state statute that authorizes Board of Zoning Appeals and variances. So taking that on, you know, the relief that is available to both the person leasing this property and also the owner is simply to do exactly what you just talked about a little while ago, which is expand that lease area, giving them enough room so that they don't need, so that they would not, you know, have adequate room to install the landscaping, fencing, and the site design. That's the relief that's there. You know, if that's what this applicant and the owner choose to do. But we just really, you know, I'm going to pull it back though and just say, you know, we're here because we advocate for the integrity of these ordinances. You know, there's a reason that sign heights were set for a certain height, a reason for a certain amount of landscaping that's required, and in this case, we just simply don't see that, you know, the owner has reasonable use of their property. There's not grounds to grant a variance, and not only that, but there is, you know, a relief available to them that they have just that they're not choosing to exercise at this time. So we'd ask you to deny this variance.
Any other discussion?
I have a question. Go ahead, Chair, you go first.
This is for the applicant and the property owner simultaneously. Would you prefer to defer this for 30 days so that you two can get together and determine how much property you need, so you don't need a variance? Because it sounds like that the property owner is willing to lease more land to you, so you wouldn't necessarily need a variance. So that would give you the opportunity to get together now that the property owner is hopefully understanding what we're talking about when we're talking about the more property that you could potentially lease, so you wouldn't need a variance.
That is fine. Thank you.
Then I would make a motion to defer this for 30 days so that the applicant can get together with the property owner and
Avoid a
potentially come to an
variance.
agreement.
Second.
Before we vote on that, I want to make a comment, okay? First of all, number one, strictly by the ordinance, this is an irregular site, a regularly shaped site, okay? The proposed use is not excluded by the land use requirements for the property. The variance, in my opinion, is the minimum necessary adjustment for the reasonable use of that property. And the variance is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this ordinance and will not injure third parties, will not be detrimental to the public welfare, and is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. The variance is not contrary to the public interest. Literal enforcement of the ordinance, the denial of the variance would result in an unnecessary hardship, having to go back and redraw everything and at this point. And granting of the variance, in my mind, is in keeping with the spirit of the ordinance. So all those things said.
Can there be discussion about the motion?
Sure.
From what you're saying is the application meets our requirements.
In my personal
In your opinion, well, in my opinion too. So the possibility of us voting on approval of the two variances or two reductions might not need a 30-day recess, that it might carry forth the property, because I realize there's a difference in a leasee, and an owner, but once somebody leases property, they are acting as the owner of that property. So to get a reasonable use, I can see that these reductions will give a reasonable use of that property. So
Are you making a substitute motion to approve?
I would like to make a substitute motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Approve both reductions, A and B, based on the regularity of the law and reasonable use of the property.
I'll second that. Motion's been made, a substitute motion's been made and seconded to approve the variance as applied. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? I think we have 5 to 1. Five ayes and 1 no.
No, 2 noes.
2 noes.
Yeah, it passes.
Just call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Opposed?
Mr. Repass?
Opposed.
Mr. Lloyd is absent. Mr. Lovingood is absent. Mr. Anderson is absent. Mr. Elliott?
Approved.
Ms. Garrett?
Approved.
Ms. Longmire? Mr. Huff?
Approved. Motion passes. Your variance is granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all for explaining, because I was
Yes.
really confused.
You were very helpful. That was very good information. I think we're done. Is there a motion to adjourn? Yes. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.